Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity podcast, episode 64. We are back and we have a fantastic guest today. First of all, I'm just going to introduce you to the usual hosts of the podcast who you know and love by now. First of all, we have Mr. Peter Lant in Bath. How are you doing, Pete?
I'm in Bath, not in the bath. That would be a bit weird, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It would be quite dangerous as well, having all this technology around in the bath. But anyway, yeah, I'm doing all right. I'm excited for this one. We've just had a pretty good chat already. So it's one of those things, isn't it? You have a chat, then you go, let's just start recording so we can get some of this on the.
Paul hasn't had a chat. Paul's coming cold, and he's gonna work out what we're talking about as we go.
We'll blindside him. We'll blindside him.
And
I'm always prepared.
And we have Mr. Paul Bassett, who is in London near Putney or in Putney. How are you doing, Paul?
I'm all right. Yeah, I'm not bad. I've always got a bag of chat. I can pull it out whenever you need it. I've got some key anecdotes. I've got quotes. I've got all the kind of
Alan Partridge,
conversational jazz.
You're like a walking meme.
I am, yeah.
Well, that is the first time I've ever heard the phrase "a bag of chat." I like it.
Yeah, exactly. A bag of chat. Yeah.
And
I've also got a bag of something else that I can't repeat.
And our guest today is Mr. Chet Morjaria, and I've known Chet for probably close to a decade now, I'd imagine. I don't know the exact year, but I first met Chet at a conference or a convention about a decade ago, and he was talking, and it was a kind of a strength and fitness and health conference, and there was multiple speakers there, and all the speakers were great. Everyone was talking about sets and reps and endurance and kind of building strength and technique, and Chet stood up and started talking about deeper things, really, I suppose you'd say, all the stuff that kind of underpins that, and kind of values and your vision for your life, and kind of writing and being creative and all that sort of stuff. And from then, I kind of, I've stayed in touch with Chet probably for the last decade. We've worked together fairly consistently over the whole time on numerous sort of projects and things that I've done and things that he's done. So I thought it'd be really, really good to get Chet onto the podcast today. I also have a copy of his book here, his first book called Work Worth Doing, and Peter has got his copy.
Hang on. You need to be talking to be able to see it now. There you go. I've got it.
There you go. Yeah. Okay. And Chet's got his good. And we can
do we need to send Paul a copy? Yeah.
Well, I was about to say, I do want. I was just staying quiet.
Well, it doesn't take long to read. We can read it out for him now if you want.
So Chet's first book called Work Worth Doing, and it's aligning your value with your values and make a meaningful mark on the world. So we're going to have a bit of a different chat today, I think, that we're going to have with Chet, in similar fashion to the conference and the convention that I first met him at. All the stuff we're going to talk about is going to relate to you and your life and your quest to have more energy and have more strength and have more vitality. But it's going to come at it from a slightly different angle. So first of all, I'd like to introduce and welcome Chet, and then let him kind of explain, really. He's been on a bit of a journey with his own business and life and what he does. So I'd like to, rather than trying to hash it together myself, I'll pass over to Chet, and he can introduce himself and sort of tell us a bit about his background and what he's doing now.
Thank you, James. Thank you. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Paul. I get the feeling you guys like approaching things from jaunty angles on this podcast anyway, right?
Yes.
Cool. And let me just say, James, on those conferences that we went to in the early days of our working relationship together, you were always the one that I looked to in the audience, because you were always the one making notes and like invested in what I was talking about. And I even remember on one of them where you in the hotel that hotel that we were staying in, the conference was held in that night, you did the work based off of what I said. Imagine that, someone actually paying attention to what you say and doing the work. And then you came back in and you were like, right, this is what I've got. What do you think? And that was such a brilliant conversation, and probably set the tone for the rest of our relationship, right, James?
Excellent. Yeah, no, I remember that very well. And that was, I think it was maybe one of the Strength Matters conferences or something in London. Yeah, which was great. Yeah. Great.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, a little bit about my story then, and who I am and what I do. So I guess you could call me a business and communications coach, and I'm founder of a business called Realign Global. And Realign Global work with mostly coaches and consultants who love what they do. So they have this passion that drives them, but they struggle to actually put that out into the world, like we all do sometimes. We've got these great ideas, got the passion, got the drive, but what does that actually look like in practice? So in their case, struggle to create meaningful offerings, meaningful communications and marketing within their business that are a true reflection of both their value, their worth, but also their values, what they hold to be true. So that's what I've spent, like James said, in one way, shape or form. That's what I've spent the last 10 years of my life doing. And if you look into what led into that, James, I think you said, let's talk a little bit about that. So I guess it started, my business and communications track started early. I got a master's degree in management, minoring in psychology from the University of St. Andrews. And yes, I was there at the same time as Prince William. And there's all sorts of conversations and stories to be had there, I'm sure. But the intersection that along the way, I discovered that I work best at is this convergence, this sweet spot between meaningful work and powerful words. And James, if you look at what I talked about over the years, I didn't know that. I didn't think that as clearly as I do now. I didn't think actually where I work best, where I put most value into the world is at this convergent point of meaningful work and powerful words. But look at all the talks that I did at Strength Matters and so on. They were all around either meaningful work or powerful words. And sometimes I got lucky and created a talk that was a combination of the two. And then I realized, actually, this is what I do best. And there's a set of people in my life who really need this stuff. That set of people that I just talked about, who are very purpose driven. They want to give to the world. They are givers. They are people pleasers, Peter. We were talking about that just a minute ago. And, they want to give to the world, but actually it's the creation of offerings. It's the looking after and being true to themselves. That's the hard part. And along the way, and I was involved in the health and fitness industry, and I think we're all connected by the health and fitness industry, if I'm not mistaken, for many years, probably the last couple of decades. I think you probably pit me at the post there, James, a little bit, and for 5 years ran a successful coaching business, which James actually was involved in. It's called Strength Education, and that focused on teaching coaches how to communicate powerfully and meaningfully with clients. And yeah, I've talked on that at summits and so on. A little bit after that, then also became, and this is me sort of finding my path, as we all do. We try to do the work that is more meaningful and more valuable in this world. So I was getting closer and closer, and was editor or managing editor of Breaking Muscle, a health and fitness website. Now that website had 8 million monthly visitors, 8 editors, 200 writers. So if we're talking about taking an organization, taking a business, taking sets of people and communications and aligning them all to a common goal for mutual win, for everyone's benefit, that's what that was. And then that led into the work that I'm doing now. And like James said, I published last year, just around December 2020, published Work Worth Doing, which became an Amazon #1 bestseller and won a highly commended award for the Short Business Book of the Year 2021. And just about to publish the second book, which is The Right Clients. I should probably get the subtitle for this right. I was still trying to remember it. So that is Choose Who You Work With, Reclaim Your Energy, and Lead with Authenticity, which probably leads us in quite nicely to what we were wanting to chat about today.
to the conversation we had just before we started recording.
The conversation, and what makes this work really meaningful to me, because that's probably a good point to start on too, right? Is what makes this work worth doing for me, the stuff that's meaningful to me, is when you guys, when the listeners, when the people in my world feel deeply connected, deeply aligned to their words, their work, and their world. So like what they're saying, what they're doing, and the people around them ultimately. When those things all connect, I find that everything works. When those things are disconnected, it feels like everything is not working.
So I think what I thought would be really, we've spoke to quite a few people, obviously, over the last 64 episodes. And
yeah, wow.
And we spoke to people in all different kind of backgrounds, from strength and endurance and nutrition, and we'll talk about it in a bit, kind of mindset and psychology and that sort of thing. But I think what I really liked from the angle that we've had discussions about in the past is when people start if they're going to start on an exercise journey or a training journey, and again, that's a bit of a cliche, I know, but they're going to start to try and better themselves in some way physically, whatever that means to them. It's very easy for people to get pushed or pulled in a certain direction because of maybe what their friends are doing, or what their family's doing, or what they've done in the past, or what they're seeing on Instagram, or what the current trend is. And I think what's really important, and what we can maybe talk about today, is this idea of authenticity and kind of, I suppose, I don't know what the term would be, but kind of making your own path, and deciding on what you want to achieve for, and we'll go into this, I know, but and for what reasons and to what ends, and what all of that means to you, and how it's going to impact your life and help you live in an aligned way. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of have a bit of a discussion around this. So I know so many people come to see me, and I know they probably come to see it. Well, I know they come to Pete, I know they come to Paul. And if they start, we've had this conversation before where you'd kind of everywhere, sometimes trainers try and pigeonhole or push people into having a certain goal or a certain direction because they feel they need that. And for some people, just the journey is the goal. Making progress is the goal to begin with. And you don't necessarily need to have a set goal, but I think you do need to have a reason and a direction, right? A reason and a direction. Yeah. And I know you mentioned Simon Sinek or Simon Sinek when we beforehand about the start with why stuff. But so what's your feelings on that, Chet? How people can, what's the best way for people to start with this?
I think you've already said so much to unpack, James. You've set the tone for the whole podcast very nicely. It's almost like you've done this before. So where you were talking about people wanting to move into health and strength and to train ultimately to better themselves, to feel better in themselves, to feel better about themselves, I think is a really important point. And that's not to say that the other goals along the way, be they strength or be they aesthetic or whatever they might be, they're all valid goals, right? But I think what we're saying here is that probably underpinning all of those is this desire to be better or to feel better and in yourself and about yourself. And that does come from something of an understanding about yourself, right? And what is it that you want? What is it that you need? Why are you doing this stuff? And you can take that to the nth degree as well, can't you? Because you can get so caught up in that it's actually meaningless to the meaning stuff is actually meaningless to talk about purpose and everything else. But I think you framed it well, James, that to have some sort of understanding of, hey, okay, look, this is important to me, and this is why it's important to me, and this is what I'm doing this stuff for, so that not necessarily and I don't think it's even necessarily for what some people say it is, because some people are like, oh, when you're in the middle of that heaviest deadlift and you'll be thinking about the reasons why you're doing it. No, you're not. You're just gonna be thinking about getting the damn bar off the floor and not dying, right? Is in the meantime. That's what I'm thinking about anyway. But I think when we are figuring out our direction, when we might get pulled in a different direction by some marketing or by what our friends are doing, like you say, okay, maybe those are the important times to say, why are we doing this? What's important to us? How can we stay true to ourselves when it comes to our training and then ultimately our life? And that's what I think we're talking about. And without getting super philosophical too early, like, isn't that what it's all about? Just being true to ourselves, and everything else is just details.
Yeah, the thing I was thinking when James was talking there, doing that intro into what you've just said there.
Yeah.
Ramble.
It's the difference. Like you say, people want something, but they don't necessarily know what it is. They just don't. Dan John's talked about this. They don't want to go from A to B. They want to go from A to not A, to something different than A.
Yeah.
And then there's a difference, like being marketed to and all that. There's a difference between being led by somebody,
Yes,
or being guided. And I know you talk about this a lot, and I've just said about, like, it comes from like the book, you've asking the right questions and all of that. And it's like, it's not saying, here's what you need to do. It's like, okay, what do you want? Well, you don't know what you want. Okay, well, what don't you want? And what, how do you want to feel? And and all of that. And then eventually you get to a point. And that doesn't have to be before you even start, does it? It can be like, well, okay, what do you want to feel like tomorrow? Okay, well, let's do this today then. And then you kind of start, and then you can change it along the way as well, right? So,
and isn't it funny, Peter, because James, you'll remember this in the strength education stuff. One of the messages I really tried to get across to coaches, because that was coaching coaches when it came to coaching and communication. And what we're talking about here is expressing, as a coach, as maybe a business owner in the coaching world. I was teaching these people how to express what they do in a way which was authentic to them, but in a way which truly expressed their worth and connected to their people, and was more than just, we're going to do a bit of squatting and we're going to do a bit of deadlifting, and then we might do a bit of pressing, and then we'll do a bit of running, and that'll be that. Because it's so much more than that, isn't it? Like, there is so much to this training journey, to this health journey. And a lot of that isn't physical, right, Peter? A lot of it is emotional, mental, spiritual. There are multiple journeys that we go on along the way. And you're right. I think actually owning some of that stuff, and if you are the person who is training, the athlete, if you like, then seeing that stuff and honoring and respecting that this is happening along the way. And actually, it's not a byproduct. It's maybe the core of it, or at least just as important as the physical stuff. That's pretty cool. And then as a coach, if you can, like, if coaches can own that and say, here's what's going on at this point in time, like, here's the journey, here's where we're going, then I think that makes for just a more fun experience, a more worthwhile experience, and a better outcome, which you can then pin back to what helped you to get there. So you can say, right, like Paul or Peter or James, or the work that they did, actually, that was a big part of doing this stuff, which I think is a mutual win.
It's also getting people to realize that, and then know that there's a plan. I had that. This is a very simple example, but I had it with my guys the other day. They've just moved up from doing stuff with like 224 bells to 228s, and they've dropped right down, and they're doing like 10 sets of 2 and all that. And I said, we're aiming to get to 10 sets of 10, but that will take a little bit of time and all that. And one of them goes, oh yeah, we might have that by Christmas, and like laughing, like, ha ha ha. And I was like, well, what else are you going to do? Well, like, what else are you doing? You're going to do it anyway, so you might as well. So it doesn't matter how long it takes. It'll take as long as it takes.
Yeah.
And it's like, but we will get there,
Yeah. And then that I'm no doubt, Pete, speaks true to your values too.
Totally.
So I imagine that, somewhere in your values, there's stuff around perseverance and around challenge and around all those different pieces that you mentioned there.
Absolutely.
What was great, just quickly as well, just to mention, just Pete, just talking there made me think, we've got a regular listener who's a client of mine called Paul Field. And this morning he posted a great picture up. Yeah. And he put it in the,
that was brilliant.
Yeah. He put it in the Health Oddity Facebook group. And he goes out walking with his dog every day, and he needs to practice his chin-ups a bit more. And I said, well, try and find a climbing frame or something on the walking route where you can do a few chin-ups every time you pass it, And he posted an absolutely brilliant picture. It looks like it could be like a picture that goes on your wall, of a silhouette of him doing chin-ups on his dog walk. And I think the dog is sort of sat down, and it's that lifestyle, and it's just, and there's again, there's so many cliches out there around all this stuff, but the idea of working towards a goal, and the fact that it's not really, and anyone who's ever worked towards a physical goal or a financial goal or any goal and got there kind of realizes that when you get there, you just kind of reflect and you think, oh, like you releasing the first book, you know, you got the first book out and you sit and you think, oh, it's done. And then what's
basically you integrate it into your existence, and then you go again. Sorry, that was I'll repronounce that. You integrate it into your existence is what I meant to say, and and then you'll go again, right? And I think
exactly, and
that's what you're talking about, James.
Yeah, and it's not the getting the goal or it's not the getting the goal that's important. It's the working towards the goal and who you become and what you learn on the way there, isn't it? And then whether you get there or not, at the end, you're a different person when you get to that. So then you set the next thing, and you've progressed and you've moved on.
Page 4, James. There's no ultimate destination, only meaningful direction.
Yep.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yep. What I like as well, actually, is
this is how Paul will read the book. I'll just read elements out to him as we go through the podcast. And, all as good if he's read it by that point.
What I like with it is your stuff that you put on social media as well, Chet. I have to read it about 3 or 4 times because you've got like.
And my work here is done if you have to do that, Peter. I'm glad.
Yeah, but it's exactly. No, I know, that's why I'm saying it. It's like the same sentence, but written a different way, or with a like align your value with your values. It's like you go, well, what the hell does that mean? It's the same thing, and then you go, no, because you're like what we were talking about. If you want to, people think they always need to help people, or they need to be there for like wife and kids and or husband and kids and all of this, and they need to be there for them and give themselves over to all of that. And it's like, well, there is that. But what about you? Like we were talking about this at the start, and it's like, so that's your value. Your value is what you can give to other people. But like, how do you align your values to it to make you to build yourself up, basically? Because otherwise you end up burning out, right? And that's like a huge thing.
Totally, Pete. And that's a really good point. In the meantime, just as an aside, as a jaunty angle, I have really interesting conversations with my publishers around what you just said, because they're like, yeah, this sentence is a bit ambiguous. I don't really know what it means. I'm like, yes, that's exactly the point.
But if someone this would go against your values, wouldn't it? Because if someone read it and goes, all right, okay, that means this, so I have to do this.
Yeah,
your work isn't done, because your value will be like, no, you need to
read
it
and
then decide what you're going to do
that and connect to it. But yeah, Peter, let's get to the important point. So what I heard you say there was, okay, look, there's this meaningful life that we hear about often, and James, you were talking about it too, this idea of doing something, training, and then integrating it back into your life. And none of this stuff happens in a bubble. Your business goals, your financial goals, your physical and training goals, and your health goals, they're all life goals, right? They all happen in conjunction with each other. And then Peter, what you were saying there about, okay, well, look, what does it actually mean? Because I think this is what we're talking about. We've mentioned these kind of nonsense phrases, or perhaps semi-meaningless phrases that are out there in the world. And sometimes it can be like your why, like, not that finding your why is meaningless if you can actually practically use that in your life and in your work and in your goals. But also this idea maybe of being true to yourself. And don't get me started on avatars. That's a whole different story, but and probably a whole different podcast. But yeah, look,
I've been down that route.
Being true to yourself, being authentic. There's so much inauthentic stuff out there on what being authentic is. So let's break it down in a way that's hopefully intuitive and hopefully just really connects to your own experiences, to the listeners' experiences of what being true to yourself means. So we don't end up with some philosophical intellectual discussion here, but we end up with, okay, well, like you said, maybe it's not this, maybe it's not A, but maybe it's somewhere along this kind of B road. So what does it not mean? Well, I think in the world of maybe Instagram and social media and so-called motivational memes, and actually a lot of books as well, a lot of pretty meaningful books. I'm probably offending like the majority of the meaningful writers here, but there's a lot of people who talk about being true to yourself, being a life and business and whatever else that's in service of others. That in order to live a meaningful life, like we need to devote, and devote is a strong word, right? Like we need to devote ourselves to helping and guiding and leading and coaching and serving others, whether those others are our families or whether they are our communities or whether they are our businesses and our teams and all this kind of stuff. And whilst that might be part of it, I think it's dangerous. And I would probably use that word actually, dangerous, because devotions, when taken to their extreme, can be dangerous, even if they're good things. Too much of a good thing is a bad thing in anything. So if we're saying that, okay, it's important to be of service to others, but like you said, Peter, what happens to ourselves in the process?
Yep.
Well, that's the first question, right? That actually, surely a meaningful life, like training in a meaningful way, work worth doing, a life worth living, strength worth building, all of that stuff, that's not just about others. We've already said it's about us anyway. It's about us feeling better, us being better. Then we can rotate it around and serve others. So we already know that there's a connection here. It's not all about serving others. There has to be something there in terms of looking after ourselves, being ourselves. And then we've started to say, okay, look, there's a circular effect here, because actually when mama's happy, everyone's happy, right? So when you look after yourself, you can do this stuff. So taking all that into play, then I think the myth is perhaps that like a meaningful life is a life that is in service of others, full stop. Whereas what we are saying here is that being in like helping others and helping yourself, looking after others and looking after yourself are not mutually exclusive. They don't have to happen at different times. They don't have to happen in different lives. They don't have to happen in different people. Actually, when done well, when done right, they're one and the same thing. And there's a sweet spot. So when you are looking at your training, you can say, actually, what is the sweet spot here where I am looking after myself? I'm doing what's right for me and doing what's right for my people. Same with your work. So if you're looking at, this is the crux of my work, is helping coaches and givers and helpers and consultants to do that in their work. And it's simply a product of, okay, who needs your help the most? Well, we are drawn to help those people, but understanding who they are is really powerful. And how can you do that best? And then that sweet spot between who you help the most and how you do it best is where everything good happens. But and if you only take one of those things, if you only take, these people really need my help, I'm just going to help them, you do yourself an injustice along the way. And then if you take this other thing of, I'm going to do my best work and put it out into the world to anyone who will listen or half pay attention or whatever, then you're not actually having the impact that you want, because we need to, Peter, like you said, help people to see what they want and what they need, and then help them to find that path, like James was saying. So yeah, that's I think what you were talking about, Peter.
Here's a jaunty angle for you. Here we go. I've just thought of this, but because so listeners of this podcast, right? I mean, there will be some trainers and stuff like that, but mainly going to be people who are the people who want to talk to people above 35 and all that. Who want to get in shape and want to know what to do, or like, want to better themselves, basically, shall we say, in life. How do they? So, because what they can be the opposite, right? You can be given everything. You can be there, giving to yourself as the coach and doing well, and then you've got this stuff to give to them. But how do they become the person who becomes receptive to it? Because they can be the person that gets in the way. Because as you say, you don't want to work with everybody, right? Because there are some people who just drain your energy. So how do you become that person who's not that? You know what I mean? Like when someone comes to you and goes, right, let's have a consultation about it, and you try and guide them, but like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. They don't want to do anything.
So how do you be coachable?
Yes, that's exactly it. It would have been quicker for me to say that, but I wanted to embellish a bit.
It's a good question. I'm just gonna explore the first jaunty angle that comes to mind, and then we can go from there, right? So when we say that someone is the wrong coach, so let's say you're listening, you're 35 plus, you're wanting to better yourself, you're wanting to improve your health or whatever, and you're trying to find the right person for you. You're trying to find the right coach for you, and that's important. Cool. So that's, I think, one of the angles here. But when we say the right coach and the wrong coach, when we say that, when I say that, oh, Peter, like you'd be the right person for me to work with, or you'd be the wrong person for me to work with, I'm not passing judgment on you as a human being. Like, who am I to do that, right? What I'm saying is that you are the right person for me or the wrong person for me. And it's the same thing, I think, when it comes to being coachable, as in like, okay, there might be a small percentage of like, if you're looking to get coached, looking to find help, find support, find a guide to help you on your health journey. Yes, there are a small proportion of any industry who are in it for the wrong reasons, but let's assume that people who are connected with this podcast are in it for the right reasons, right? And that they can sniff that out and smell that out. Okay, cool. Well, then I think it's important to do two things. Like, it's important first of all to understand that someone, like, it's okay for someone, for a guide to not be the right guide for you. Like, not all coaches are made equal. Not all help and support is made equal. So there are various things that we can use to understand that, and maybe to start to understand what type of support you need. Here are some interesting things. So this isn't even actually around values, really. It's just around humans. So let's look at things like, okay, so what are the patterns in your working life, in your behaviors, in your life, in your family, in all of that stuff that come up again and again and again? So what are the struggles that you continue to find yourself in? What are the relationships, like the working relationships, the personal relationships that you find yourself in? Where do they go wrong down the line? What makes you fall off the wagon? So, and this can be on like your, on your eating, on your nutrition, on your training, on anything that's important to you, that you know is important, you intellectually, emotionally know is important, but somehow like you end up falling headfirst off the wagon and then struggle to get back on. So what gets you every time? What comes and bites you in the ass? Like all of these types of questions. What enables you, or who enables you, or what kind of help enables you to get back on the wagon? So starting to answer some of these types of questions around us as human beings are going to be the answers to the support we need are going to be found in there. So we're going to be looking at things like what is it that you truly need? Not the surface level stuff, because ultimately any trainer can teach people how to move. Like any trainer can teach people how to pick things up and put them down again, with all respect to all trainers out there. But actually what we're saying is like, as a trainer, what's your uniqueness? Because as a trainer, if they can communicate that, then someone who is looking to get coached and looking for support can say, okay, like, well, I can do the deep work to figure out what I need. Now I know what I need. Be that someone who helps me with the basics. So it might be that sometimes you overcomplicate things, right? We all do that from time to time. We overthink and overcomplicate. So actually a trainer who then, this is talking about being coachable now, a trainer who is someone who is really caught up with the details and the fancy stuff and all that, they're not going to be someone who helps you. They're going to send you further down your rabbit hole, right? But a trainer who is someone who just sticks to the basics and is really good at that super consistent basic stuff, well, that might be the type of trainer that you're looking for example, right? So that's just one example, but understanding what it is that you really need will mean then that the training is meaningful as well, because you're going to go to that person for the right reasons. You're going to go to them for more than learning how to move. And that's what we were talking about in terms of owning the journeys, which means that the lessons from that training, I know because I work with James, that the lessons that James delivers through his training directly and indirectly directly impact people's lives. And Peter and Paul, I have no doubt that the same is true for yours too. But isn't that what we're talking about? Isn't that then being coachable, being able to receive coaching, allowing you to undergo a meaningful journey, enjoy it along the way, have fun and fulfillment, and actually get some good results, and then start all over again?
I think that's brilliant, because what you've just said there will really help. Because the way I was thinking about it when I was asking the question was like, because some people will have a coach or whatever, and they'll be like, oh, it just annoys me, and they don't turn up, and they're not consistent or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with saying, right, are you in questioning that and saying, are you the coach for me?
Yeah.
So I'll go and find someone else. And like you say, it's not personal. And I know as coaches, we'll have all taken things personally in the past, but then you learn to get over that, don't you, when you after a certain amount of experience, because you're not for everybody. And that's just the way it goes. It doesn't mean the person doesn't like you and they don't think you're a nice person. They wouldn't go out for a drink with you or something. They just don't want to spend all this time being
here's an
coached by
interesting
you.
thing, which is probably going to piss off loads of trainers out there. But as a client, as someone who is, like wanting to find the right support for you and your health journey, here's what you can do as well. So great first question, Peter, like, is this the right person for me? And what are some really simple stress tests for this, right? Let's just take a really intuitive test. Would you go on holiday with your trainer? If not, I know James takes his clients on holidays, so it's a really good test.
James is taking that to a whole new level.
Yeah, exactly. It's a pretty, and the reason that I'm asking that is it's a really human test, right? So actually, if you connect with that person on a human level, that's probably the basis for something really good. So are they the right person? Then another question you can ask is this the right thing? So sometimes, with all best intentions, and this is why I'm in a job that like trainers or coaches will have best intentions. They'll really want to help their people, but they just won't know how to put it together in a support package, like in a training package, in a membership, or, in a program or whatever that might be. They've just got it wrong somewhere along the way, and they didn't mean to get it wrong. They really want to help. So here's a good thing that you could do to your trainer, not do to your trainer. That sounds really bad. Like here's something here's a good conversation you could have with your trainer is, and believe me, like trainers need these conversations as well, is you could say, look, really love our relationship here. Ideally for me, here's the support that I would love. Like, here's what I would love. And here's what I think I need. Now, your trainer might do a few things. They might tell you to F off, or they might say, cool, thanks for the feedback. Hopefully they had to say that before doing whatever then they do with it. They might do nothing with that feedback. They might do everything with that feedback. They might ask you for more feedback, but what a great conversation to be having. I think there's real mutual win in there, because often these client-coach relationships will occur where the coach doesn't realize that that's what the client needs. So if you voice your needs, then it will say a lot in terms of whether that coach comes back to you and says, look, totally get that. It's just that within this business, there isn't scope for that. Okay, cool. I get that. And then you've got a decision to make as a client, or yeah, cool. We can lean things in that direction or something else. But now we've got a meaningful conversation occurring around needs and meeting those needs. And that feels like a pathway to good things to me.
I mean,
that's one of those things. It could be
a service agreement. It's a service agreement between you and your client. And the one thing I've noticed over the years is, on one hand, I do have we have a friendship relationship, but ultimately we're a service.
Yeah.
And then there's that professional distance, that you need to maintain in order to have an objective opinion. And I try, we socialize and we have a community and we get on. But I like to keep a professional distance. I made the mistake years ago when I was working with musicians to be a bit more like one of them, particularly when I was quite young. And that never works when you have to make difficult decisions.
No, it's like the 2 beers rule when you're going out with when you have a night out with a group of clients, isn't it? Like, never be out past midnight, two drinks and then you're out. But I hear you, Paul. I think what I was saying is more around so that holiday thing. James does take it to the extreme, but what I'm saying here really is like that you choose to keep a professional distance for your reasons and for the right reasons, Paul. At the same time, that doesn't mean that you don't have that human relationship and that human connection. You just choose to express that in your business in a way that serves both of you well, which is professional distance in your case, right?
Yeah, I mean, because I've got an experience where if you're going around Amsterdam with 4 young lads from Sheffield and you partake in the local delicacies and end up losing the key to the hotel and you're the one responsible, and that can go the wrong way. And I made a decision quite early on never to get too involved on that side.
Well, local delicacies could mean so many things there. I'm not going to question you on what exactly you meant, but
it was a different time in my life when there was more. I took more chances.
And here's an interesting perspective, just to bounce off what you said there, Paul, around experiences in your life and the people that you help. James, you'll have heard me say this before. I think the cheat code to finding the people who you can help best as a coach, and finding the people who can help you as a client, finding the coaches who can help you as a client, is that coach is probably going to have been on a similar journey to you, and they're probably going to be a couple of steps ahead. And I don't necessarily mean a health journey either. Perhaps a health journey, perhaps if you've got back issues, they've had back issues or whatever. But I mean more so from a human perspective, which is where the connection comes from. Like, they get where you are. So they get where you are in life. They get the family commitments, you know, they get the commitments to your work. They get the fact that you're probably, for your listeners, are probably at that stage in life where you are starting to like question the meaning of life a little bit, and you are starting to think, okay, actually, like, what have I done so far, and what do I want to do, and how do I do that, and how does this all connect? And you know, someone like people like you will understand that of your people. So looking for someone who is a couple of levels ahead of you, and actually probably only a couple of levels ahead of you. So, you know, not 5 or 10 levels ahead of you, because someone who is just a couple of levels ahead of you, it's okay to look at your coach and say, oh, that coach is still like figuring some of this stuff out. Yes, that's why they're so good at helping you, because their brain, their whole being is consumed with figuring this stuff out. It's just that they're 2 steps further along the journey. And guess what? When they will be 2 steps further on from that. So you grow together. Right.
There was something Fabio said about that, and he said this quite a lot. Fabio Zonin, who we had on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, actually, but from Strong First, and he's saying he struggled with all this stuff all his life. Mm-hmm. That's why he thinks he's got better as a coach, because you get someone who's an Olympian who's just naturally good at stuff and goes in and does it, and then they come out and then want to coach someone. They just go, you just do that. It's in that Made to Stick, the book the Strong Book Club that I was in. It was Chip and Dan Heath Made to Stick. It's the what's it called? It's the curse of knowledge, isn't it? You're just like, just pick that up and do that, or you do that. And they're like, well, how? And you go, well, it's easy. You just do that, and you've never had to figure it out. So therefore, it makes it harder to explain to someone. But if you've muddled through this and you've come from the place that person is, then who's the best person to help them? You're going to be, and like you say, you're only a couple of steps ahead, you remember it.
Yeah, and you can take that at a very literal, practical, physical level, or at a human level, right? So, for example, so I used to coach Olympic weightlifting for many years, and I wasn't too bad at it either. The coaching part, I was bad at the Olympic weightlifting, and that was the whole thing. And it actually took me, I think it was overall, and like this will make you laugh. It took me 18 months, I reckon, to like physically, as in for my body to comprehend and actually create full hip extension, like the proper full violent hip extension that I needed. So some people I know can do that in 18 seconds, never mind 18 months. They're like, oh, do you mean like this? Yeah, exactly like that, you bugger. But it took me 18 months. And, you know, that was probably a part of why I was able to find many different ways of many jaunty angles, let's say, of being able to work the angles and coach that stuff and help people to figure it out. So you can do it in a very literal way, but I also kind of mean like just 2 steps on in life, 2 steps on in terms of physical, in terms of health and physicality and all of that stuff, I think is a useful marker. And we know that intuitively, right? We know that actually people who share your story, who are a little bit beyond, I mean, it's the hero's journey, which we've probably all connected with it at some point in the past, where like there's something going on in your life, and then there's something that stops you and makes you think. Peter, for you, apparently it's some of my Facebook statuses, and then it makes you stop and think, and then you're like, oh, okay, maybe there's something different here. And then if there is something different, and then you allow yourself to step into that, then there's a turning point. And you say, okay, well, I'm not content with the status quo anymore. I'm not content with being unfit. I'm not content with not being, you know, as strong or as fit or as healthy as I need to. Something needs to change. There's usually a trigger, a catalyst, something that happens to you, something that someone has said, or something that, you know, that an event that makes you shift your perspective. And then you shift your perspective and, okay, cool. So then you move into this new way of doing things, and then as you move into this new way of doing things, there's struggles along the way, and then somewhere along the way you pick up a coach, because a coach can help you through this type of stuff. And then so like, okay, you get coached, and then you move in a meaningful direction, and you find yourself at an outcome, and then you get to this outcome, this place that you wanted, figure out that there's loads more to it anyway, and your whole world opens up, like you were saying, James. But then also you have this need and want to bring this back home, right? So you bring it back to your community, you bring it back to your family, you bring it back to your business, you bring it back to yourself. Maybe you become a coach. You know, some people choose to go down that path and then do that. So this is the journey, and this is the hero's journey. And I can't even remember why we started this conversation now, but yeah, that's how I see it.
So I think in terms of the authenticity that people will look to find when starting on their own, you know, hero's journey, if you like, what advice have you got for people? I mean, is it best just to kind of get started and then course correct along the way? Is it best just to take some action? Is, you know, this kind of idea that you take imperfect action and you kind of course correct as you go, and then things will be revealed to you on the path, as it were? Because I think a lot of people maybe sit around. I know a lot of people at the moment, we're recording this on the 2nd of November. It's going out at the end of November, I think. So probably a lot of people might be listening to this, and it's going to kind of be the end of November, the start of December. Yeah. And if people aren't already in some form of training, you know, if they're not exercising, if they're not training, December is not typically a month where people start exercising, is it? Most people will put it off to January, and they'll kind of be, oh, well, we'll get Christmas and New Year out the way, and then I'll get started, you know. But I often find that December's probably about the best time of year to actually start, because the gym's going to be quieter, or you know, if you are going to train indoors, it's going to be quieter. And also you're kind of getting yourself, you know, going before January. So, I mean, what do you think from a coaching perspective, from just a human to human kind of perspective, finding that authenticity in your direction? What would you kind of recommend?
Maybe not the
Quite a
answer.
difficult question.
Maybe not the answer that you're wanting me to
no.
give you, but I think, to me, something is better than nothing is another myth. Like, something is not always better than nothing. Sometimes it is, often it is, but I'm not sure that it always is, because actually, if that something is the same behavioral patterns that you have put yourself in like many times, then it's not going to help you. And so I was having a conversation just before this about someone who, from when they were like their family life to their sporting career to their business career, this is literally the way it went, to their business career, to other businesses that they've been involved in, found themselves in a real kind of behavioral loop of looking to people for guidance, but because of like what was, you know, how they were brought up and the work ethic that was instilled in them, look to the wrong people for guidance, always ended up finding the wrong person to try to help them. That person wanted one thing, you know, the person I was helping wanted something else, and so actually they ended up clashing, butting heads, and almost being taken advantage of in that situation. Now what I'm trying to get at here is that maybe instead of thinking I need to do something, like, just go back to those ideas of like, what do I really need here? Do I need the help with accountability? Like, do I need the help with do I need help with figuring out what I need? Because not any trainer is going to be helping you with that. Like, do I need help with let me think, like actually doing what's right for me? Like, will I go into the gym and train in a group environment and get so carried away with helping others in my group that even in that environment, because that's just my personality, that I won't get most out of it, and actually I'd probably end up just spending loads of money helping other people and not finding something in myself, right? So all these types of questions, although they might seem quite deep, is December is probably a useful time to reflect on those and then start some conversations and get into it either in December or in January or whenever. So it's not a super clear answer to your question, but I guess it's just wanted to dispel that myth for a second that that something is always better than nothing, because like I think you've got three pockets of behaviors here. You've either got like the behaviors which cause you to self-destruct somewhere down the line. That's definitely not better than nothing. You've got the things that you really need. That comes with an understanding of what you really need. And that just comes with an understanding of being able to reflect back with a little bit of objectivity and say, okay, like, you know, and honesty and responsibility, and say, okay, what is it that I need? And then you've got the something which is probably going to be better than nothing, but you could probably do better. I mean,
Yes.
we could talk about values and stuff here. And I think we almost wanted to, like, you know, the book is about values, and we started to, like, you know, we thought, okay, we're probably going to end up talking about values somewhere down the line. And the reason that I haven't brought it up really in this conversation is it feels like the conversation we're having is a little bit more practical than that. And it's, and, you know, and it's, so you're asking some really sort of pertinent, practical questions based off of, okay, look, if someone is in this situation, what can they do? And the answers aren't always easy, but or necessarily simple, but I think that they are meaningful. And look, if someone wants to figure, like, if you are 35, 40, 45, 50 or whatever, you probably know this, even if you're listening to this and thinking, Chet, you're talking a load of rubbish. Like, I just want to go and get a sweat on and lift some tin and put it down. Yeah, you do, but then you will know that at some point down the line, in different aspects of your life, you're kind of questioning the whys. You know, you're questioning okay, like, why am I doing this, and how can I do this in a way which better integrates with other aspects of my life and actually allows me to become a better person and be better in myself and feel better in myself, which is where we started, as opposed to just be healthier. Not that that's a bad thing, but it's one part of a big puzzle, right? So I guess that's the one take home here, if there is one, that like none of this stuff happens in a bubble. And if we can start to see how human impacts health and health impacts human, and this is where we started our work many years ago, James, right? With the human, always starts and ends with us, and starts and ends with the human. So if we can just pick into that a little bit, you don't need to like read tons of books on it or like spend, you know, weeks and weeks thinking about it. But if we can just like not continue with the default and for a second and just pause and say, actually, what effect is this having on me? What is this having on my relationships? Am I going to the gym? Am I having to fight against my family every time to actually like get to the gym? Is there a better way of doing this? Can I do this in a different way that integrates my family, that I have their support with it, or something like that? Like, that those are the meaningful questions, I think, especially for Health Odyssey listeners.
I think that, right. I think we should talk about values, actually. I
was trying to avoid them, Peter, damn it.
And well, we can if you want, but
I'm joking.
No, I think because I've said this a lot, actually, because it seems like everyone's talking about values now, but James keeps telling me that's not true. We are. Not everyone isn't. We are, because I've been listening to you, and I've been working with Pom, who works with you as well, and
in our communities and networks.
So we have been talking about values, but it feels to me like everybody is, because of the people who I'm listening to are talking about them. But when I worked with Pom on getting my brand together, you know, we mentioned this before we started recording, because values are great to have, right? But you can say to someone, what are your values, or what values do you think you hold dear and you want to put out into the world?
Sure.
And they'll come up with like a few things that are just words that everyone should probably have anyway, like trustworthiness and all of this sort of stuff. Integrity and blah, 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 right? And it's like, okay, that's great. Do you do that though? Are they you? Do you live by it? And it's pretty much something that everybody should just have anyway, right? Like, let's face it. So that's why, like, when we're doing the work with Palmer, like when James has been doing the work with you, no doubt, you go deep into it, and you're like, right, how do you live your life, or how do you want to live it? What do you want to look like? What do you want to put out into the world? What do you want the world to look like? And then you come back with, here's what it looks like. Here's here's the values you want to live by.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can go back to that, can't you? And you can say, right, like pretty much most decisions that you make, does that stack up with what I'm talking about?
Yeah, and I think, Peter, that there's a couple of things here. So everyone's talking about values, yes, but everyone really is talking about purpose and why, and they have been for many years. Thank you, Mr. Cynic. And even in so in business and in entrepreneurship, there's a real drive at the moment for purpose-driven business, whatever that means. But actually, the stuff that pervades that is the same thing that you've been talking about, Peter, in that, like, so, or the only difference is they'll throw more money at it. So they'll spend money to engage these consultants who will then go in and give them, like, help them figure out their values, or actually give them their values probably. And they're just words on a page, or actually maybe they end up being words on a wall when it comes to the business, but they're still no better, right? So there's a couple of really simple things I can point the listeners to in terms of, okay, if you're connected to this concept of values, and more so, if you're connected to this concept of purpose, which I imagine most of your listeners are, because they're connected, conscientious humans, right? And if you are like most humans who have maybe watched the Cynic 18-minute TED Talk, or have read Start With Why or whatever, and you're like, hey, this is cool, I want to do this, but have never really been able to come down to what's my why, you are not alone. Like most people are in that camp. And there's a couple of things that you can do very practically, and there's going to be a little bit of a plug for the book in here, so apologies in advance for that, but this is where the stuff is. So what I would say is, first of all, create values in a meaningful way. How you create your values, how you create your mission, how you create your vision is just as important as the result. Exactly like training. It's not just about the result. In fact, it's not really about the result in some cases. Like, it's just as much about the journey as it is about the result. So, like, how we create these things is really important. In a business, that might mean involving much of the workforce, right? Much of the team. That's going to be a really important way of doing it, as opposed to top-down values, which never really work. Vision works like that, values don't. But in terms of us as human beings, what's our values? Here's a really straightforward way of doing it. And this is like a 15-minute exercise that you can do to really come up with your values. It's called Words to Live By in the book. It's in part 2 of the book, and it's called Words to Live By. And James, we've done
page
this.
67.
Page 67. I was just looking for the page. Thank you, Peter. But I can't multitask, so I appreciate you doing that.
So open at that page, actually.
I know I should have bookmarks and fancy post-its, shouldn't I? But James, you've done this exercise. It's the anti-values exercise. So this is the interesting thing. For after years and years of trying to help people come up with their purpose, their why, their values, I found that asking people, okay, what's really important to you? Like, what do you stand for? What's really meaningful to you? They're really difficult questions to answer. Whenever I'm like, okay, Peter, what pisses you off? You're like, okay, how much time have I got?
I was going to say,
let me go. Yeah. Need more paper. That's that type of thing. And so that's a really useful starting point. Why is it useful? Because here's the thing, and this is especially useful to consider as we get older, which is what we're talking about here, right? So, values are usually they are expressions of ourselves. They're expressions of our best selves, and they're expressions of our worst selves. So values are the things that we want to be when we're at our best, right? These are the behaviors that we want to live by. So for me, it's honesty and responsibility and respect. When I'm at my best, I'm exuding these values through every pore, right? But when I am at my worst, I am not. I'm going against these values. And if you look at younger Chet, stupider, reckless, irresponsible, disrespectful, dishonest Chet, I was that guy. And a lot of the time, this is where our values come from. They come from parts of ourselves, previous versions of ourselves that actually we don't like anymore. And we have changed and we have transformed, and change and transformation is at the heart of coaching, which is why this whole bloody thing works, right? So this is why it's based on value. So what can you do? You can think of situations that just really just rile you, piss you off. A stress test for this would be you feel like you say something when these situations occur. If something happens that is against your values, that's on a train and you're on a train, like you would have to say something. And if you didn't say it, let's say someone was being disrespectful, like openly disrespectful to someone else, right? Respect is one of my values. If I didn't say something, like first of all, I hope I would. If I didn't, then it would grate at me. I would have been like, shit, I really should have said something there. That's not good not to have done that, right? So, because it's just fundamentally, viscerally, I would feel bad because it's against my values. So think of situations that piss you off or annoy you. Okay, then think of what do these, like what is the essence of these situations? So in all these situations, what are the commonalities? Is it, so for example, being late and being patronizing could both be disrespect, right? So those are two things that could both be around disrespect. Okay, cool. Now we have disrespect, right? Well, what's the opposite of those? So then I might be looking at, then words like integrity and honesty and all this type of stuff might come out. And then you can shape them all together to say what one word encapsulates all of these concepts and is like, an 8 or 9 out of 10 for me, where like a 0 out of 10 is, like, this is useless. It's a waste of time. These are words on a page. These don't mean anything. Like, I wish I'd never listened to that podcast. And then a 10 out of 10 is I'm going to get this tattooed on my forehead or other such permanent markers, right? Which, like, I'm going to paint this in massive letters on my wall, because then it's like, I live by these. These are me. This is, and they're you because they're what you stand for in good and bad, in better and worse. So that's one thing that if you want to truly get stuck into your values, I encourage you to get the book. We can put a link in the show notes, I guess, and then do this exercise. The second thing, which I can't, is this in the book? I can't even remember. Anyway, is create value statements from there. Now, value statements are directives, action statements that help you embody your own values and help your people. So if you have a team, for your family or for your clients, that will help them to say, this is what Paul means by these values, right? This is what it is. So for me, for example, honesty would be tell the truth regardless of consequence. Responsibility would be taking action on the matters that matter. So, all these types of ideas so responsibility can actually, again, be a devotion that's bad. Our values can lead us down dark paths. Responsibility, if I take responsibility for everything and everyone, which I've been prone to do in my life, we've got a problem. But if I understand that responsibility is a responsibility to me and to my people and to the world to take action on the things that matter, the matters that matter, now I'm getting somewhere, because that instantly helps me to say, shit, I need to prioritize some stuff here. I need to put these into, here's the stuff I need to stop doing. Here's the stuff I need to start doing. Here's the stuff I need to continue doing. And I can constantly use my values to make real-time course corrections, which one of you talked about before, in my life and in my training. Okay, cool. Now we're getting somewhere, because look, responsibility could be the thing that stops me training or starts me training or gets me to do something else, right? If I'm looking at a responsibility to take action on the matters that matter, do I value my health? Sure, I do. I should probably take action on it then. But actually the dark side of that, if I'm not doing that, would be I would go back into default behavioral check, which is what we were talking about before, which is trying to make everyone happy by doing everything. And that's actually going against my values. It's the wrong interpretation of responsibility. So 2 things: create values in a meaningful way, do the words to live by exercise in the book, then create your value statements around them. So you should end up with 3 to 5 values, because anything more than that, you're not actually going to be able to use them. And statements which start with a verb, they start with a doing word, they start with, this is how you live this value, this is how you train this or work this value.
No, that's brilliant. I mean, I think I've done values exercises, probably a dozen times, in my life, and certainly doing it the last time that we did it together, when we worked together, which is the exercises that then went into the book, were by far the most powerful and actually got to the heart of things, rather than, like you say, just you've got to write some words down in a pad that kind of sound okay, and you end up writing them, but don't really mean anything with
how
you.
many times in our subsequent work, whether we're talking about putting together the Strong You project, whether we are talking about you veering off course and coming back onto course when it comes to your life and your work, like we genuinely go back to, when it comes to your marketing, like we genuinely go back to those things that we wrote, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And you know, when they just resonate with you and when they're right, you know, so no, it's fantastic.
And
if you're trying to base your life on the values that you've come up with and you're not living up to them, you've got the wrong ones, haven't you? You know, you can see that straight away. So, yeah.
And then they're interesting when they contrast. As well.
I was just going to say, Chet, so I think that also, to tie it back round and to loop it back round to authenticity, where we kind of spoke about, you know, people, if someone goes to see a trainer and the trainer says, well, what's your goal? And then they think, well, what does the trainer want me to say? Oh, I want to lose weight. I want to tone up. I want to get fitter. And a lot of the time people do the values exercise and they try to come up with the words that they think are right, you know, or they think, you know, are going to look good or sound good, or they think they should, rather than actually the things that are true to them and are authentic. So it kind of loops it right back to where we started, you know.
And here's the deal, I think, James, like it's on you to know what you want, right? Like it's on your coach to help you figure out what you need and get you to want what you need, ideally. Like a coach who's worth their salt will get you to want what you need without you even knowing it happening. So, but if you can't come into that situation knowing what you want, and I'm speaking to this as a client and as a coach as well, that's a really difficult working scenario. So when we're talking about values, this is an idea of, okay, here's what I want out of life. Here's what I want out of my health. Here's what I want out of all of this stuff. Then you can have a conversation about, you know, what you need in order to facilitate that, or how what you need connects with that, or how we can channel that want to get to what we need. But I can tell you that, like, you know, as a human, when you don't know what you want, which is where values and mission and vision come in, you feel lost. And as a coach, working with like most clients, bless them, don't know what they want, and it's hard, right? But when you have clients who know what they want, you can do much more impactful work in terms of what they actually need, which is why I start all my client interactions with the values and the vision stuff, because once we have a mutual understanding of what it is that you want, cool, we can do anything from here.
No, that's brilliant. I think that's probably a really good place to wrap up, actually, Chet. That was like we started the conversation, and as we said before we started recording, I wasn't exactly sure where it was going to go. I had a rough kind of, you know, this word of authenticity to hang the conversation on, and I think it's been fascinating. It's been very different, and I hope and I think a lot of our listeners will have got a lot from it, and it will have made them think. So thank you. That's brilliant. If people want to find out more about you and your work, and you know, and maybe get themselves a copy of the book and that sort of thing, what's the best way for people to connect with you and to find out more, Chet?
So I would probably say the book is the one main thing. Like that's the place to start. If you connected with this conversation, then read the book. It's really short and readable, and it's even got pictures in it, cartoons, and illustrations. So
did you draw them?
What's that? I didn't. My drawing is about as good as my triple extension, Peter. So that wouldn't happen. But I had a really talented illustrator help me, and a different talented illustrator help me on this one. But the reason is because I wanted it to be a fun, fulfilling, rewarding experience to read the book, just as the work that I'm talking about in it. So read that. And then at the back of the book, it's got all my contact details anyway, in terms of how to get in contact, how to take the next steps and everything else. And if you want to look me up on socials, I'm Chet Morjaria, as is appearing on your screen right now at the bottom of my mugshot. So just type that in. There's not many Chet Morjaria, so you'll probably find me Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, somewhere along those lines.
Excellent. And we'll put a link to a link to the book on Amazon or whatever on the show notes, and we'll put all those social media links on and stuff.
Great.
That'd be great.
Thank you, team. And just to say thank you for having me. This conversation was different for me too. I spoke about stuff on this podcast that I've not spoken about on any podcast before, really. Wasn't expecting to go to some of those places, but all good.
Okay. I'll just, Pete, have you got anything you'd like to say before we close up?
Yeah, well, I love that, because that's our aim, isn't it? To talk about things that, like, you know, because you can get things from all over the place and people talk about the same things over and over again. It's to try and just draw something different out. And, being a bit flippant, but I can sum all of this podcast up in a meme that you can probably go and find on Instagram for your values, which is don't be a dick. There you go. Sorted.
There we go.
No, that was great. Thank you, Chet.
Mr. Paul Bassett, have you anything you'd like to say before we close up?
Yes, if I unmute. So one thing I like to do, because I've got lots of, we spend a bit of time on Instagram, and you can use the translate function. And I've got lots of, it's so easy, particularly in the Northern Hemisphere, to be used to everyone writing in English. And so there's a couple of Russian coaches and athletes that I follow. So I'd occasionally do Google Translate or whatever the option is at the bottom of the Instagram. And one of them is a guy called Ivan Denisov, who, if you do a bit of research into him, you can see he's a bit of a legend in the kettlebell world, but also a bit of a mutant in terms of what he can do. But at the top of one of his recent posts, it says you should not look for a better coach if you're not ready to become one of the best of their students. And I think it's quite an interesting thing. It's this kind of two-way street. There's a kind of theatre to coaching, and that interplay between the coach and the student is a vastly interesting and continually fulfilling thing. And you both feed upon each other. It's over the weekend, I had some circumstances with a client where it will end up adapting my business. There's so many a lot of things I've built and layered upon in my own coaching business has been informed by things I got wrong, things that my clients have suggested, things that I've seen work, things that didn't work. And I recently launched an 8-week nutrition challenge. It just didn't work. It didn't work. I handpicked a load of clients, and it just didn't work. But it's that kind of two-way street. But I think, and it's certainly something, if you can come at any situation, say, am I actually doing the best? Am I giving it actually what I could give? Have I gone in cynical? Have I gone in, am I enthusiastic? Then you can actually be objective about whether the thing works.
No, it's brilliant. So just to wrap up, guys, if you could please like, share, subscribe to this podcast. If you are listening or watching on a platform that allows you to leave a review, please leave us a review as well. That helps us get out there. And if you'd like to join the Facebook group, just search in groups Health Oddity and join that, and then we'll let you in there to continue the conversation there. Thank you so much to Peter Lant, to Paul Bassett, to our guests for today, Chet Morjaria, and we will see you all again next week. Thank you, guys. Take care.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com, or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Odyssey.